To a couple of wonderful days advocating on behalf of treatments for rare disease. I am going to speak about the User Fee Act reauthorizations, and I think our thought was to hold questions until the very end of the presentations. Am I right? And so I look forward to engaging with you on this very important topic. So what are user fees? User fees are monies paid by private organizations to the Food and Drug Administration to facilitate review. Very importantly, they involve discussions between regulated industry and the agency. The scope of those discussions are limited. Industry is not able to discuss policy changes with the agency, but the initial phase of the reauthorization process involves what's called technical discussions, and those relate to provisions that would help speed up review, make it more efficient, make communication between industry and the agency more clear, and really anything that does not affect standards for review. Following the what's called technical phase, a package of recommendations is delivered to Congress, and at that point, Congress, with input from stakeholders widely, can choose to make policy recommendations with regard to the operations of the agency. And that's where we are right now in the process of reauthorization. The technical agreements have been finalized and delivered to the Hill, and now the Hill is able to look at those, decide what it thinks, and decide whether to change anything or add anything. Now, why did this system come about? Well, just taking the very first User Fee Act as an example, PDUFA, the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, prior to the implementation of that act, the median time for review of drugs was 29 months. And so we heard stories of people dropping off their application and then coming back 2 years later, dropping off another application and seeing those boxes with materials still sitting, gathering dust in FDA's application office. And so clearly it was to everybody's advantage, patients and the agency and industry, that some system be found to get additional resources into the agency. And so as you see on this slide, after the Prescription Drug User Fee Act, which was renewed in 96, 2002, 2007, and 2012, a number of other user fee acts were established, the Medical Device User Fee Act, MEDUFA, BSUFA, and GDUFA. And as you get to work more on these things, you learn the names of the acts are FDA and FDASIA and FDAMA, and just best not to even try to remember all of these acronyms. All right, so why is it so important that we continue this? In the beginning, the percentage of resources, FDA resources devoted to drug review that came from user fees were 5%. As you can see here now, 80% of user fees for human drugs and biologics, or drug review, the resources for drug review are 80% user fees. On the device and diagnostic side, it's 30%. Nobody is terribly happy about this situation. Everybody thought that Congress would be appropriating money to support review and not relying so much on user fees. Nonetheless, where we are now is that these user fee reauthorization bills are absolutely must pass. If they do not pass, the agency really comes to a halt and has to issue RIF notices to the staff, and it would be a very, very bad situation. Second reason why it's so important that these user fee acts be reauthorized is that they really contain extremely important provisions for drug review. For example, the 2012 Act, FDASIA, contains a breakthrough, established the breakthrough therapy designation, and that designation allows FDA to accelerate the review of products that have shown early clinical evidence of efficacy, and it has been applied to about 100 products so far. It established use of surrogate endpoints and accelerated approval for rare disease therapies, something that this organization was very, very involved with, and also created a rare pediatric disease priority review voucher program whereby a company that gets a product approved for a rare disease can then get a voucher for priority review and apply that to another product. So what's next? As I said, the user fee acts have to be reauthorized by September 30, 2017, or FDA has to start reducing its staff. We do have a very unusual, as everybody knows, legislative situation, which we may talk about later, where we have a highly partisan Congress. We have the Trump administration at this point in time not having made clear what its goals are for FDA as a whole, really, let alone the User Fee Act reauthorizations. And we don't at this time have a commissioner, so we don't know the commissioner's priorities. I think I will leave it at that and be happy to address later some of the specific provisions that will affect patients in the user fee reauthorizations.